The moment she opened the bedroom door, the world seemed to tilt, the floor shifting beneath her feet. What she saw was a scene that no amount of imagination could have prepared her for. Her billionaire husband, the man she had trusted with her heart and her unborn child, entangled in the sheets with her cousin. Shock froze her in place. Her hand pressed against her swelling stomach, as if to protect her child from the violence of the betrayal. Her mind refused to process the images before her, jumping between disbelief, anger, and an aching sorrow that twisted her chest. Her cousin, the one she had grown up with, laughed softly, a sound that now felt hollow and cruel. The familiarity of her face, once comforting in childhood memories, now became a dagger in her heart. She felt tears sting her eyes, threatening to spill, yet she held them back, not just for herself but for the life inside her. Every memory of shared secrets, birthdays, and holidays now felt like a cruel joke, a betrayal written in intimate familiarity. Her husband, caught mid-motion, froze when he saw her. The polished confidence, the commanding aura that had always defined him, crumbled instantly. For the first time, he seemed human, vulnerable, and cornered, but it was a vulnerability that offered no solace, only pain. The room, once a sanctuary, now reeked of deceit, lust, and broken promises. Her breath came in sharp, shallow bursts as the emotional storm raged within her. Fear for her child mingled with the betrayal she could scarcely articulate. How could the man who had promised protection, loyalty, and love behave this way? The reality was unbearable, yet undeniable. In that instant, she realized that her life, her marriage, and her trust had been irrevocably shattered. The scandal was not just a private humiliation, it was a revelation that would ripple through family, social circles, and the very foundations of her world. They had met at a charity gala, a night dripping with crystal chandeliers and the hum of soft classical music. He had appeared effortlessly magnetic, his tailored suit cutting a striking figure against the glittering crowd. She remembered the way he smiled, confident yet approachable, his words flowing smoothly as though the world had been waiting for his arrival. The allure of his wealth was impossible to ignore, but it was more than that. It was the charm, the charisma, the sense that life with him would be larger than any ordinary existence. In his presence, she felt seen, desired, and elevated, as if merely standing beside him was a passport to a world she had once only admired from afar. Early in their courtship, she was blinded by romance and fascination. Lavish dinners, spontaneous trips, and grand gestures masked the subtle warning signs she chose to overlook. He often dismissed her opinions with a smile, redirecting conversations toward his experiences and achievements. At times, she noticed a sharpness beneath his charm, a hint of entitlement, a flicker of impatience. But she attributed it to stress or the eccentricities of a man with great responsibility. Their relationship dynamic, at first intoxicating, gradually revealed an imbalance. Decisions were subtly dictated by him, her desires often secondary to his ambitions. Yet she held on to hope, believing that love would bridge the gaps and that marriage would temper his arrogance. She envisioned a family, a home filled with warmth and laughter, and a life where her child would grow in security and love. Her heart clung to the promise of stability, imagining that shared dreams could overcome the cracks she glimpsed early on. Looking back, the red flags were glaring: small acts of control, subtle dismissals, and moments of emotional distance, but they were hidden beneath the glittering facade of charm and wealth. She had been enchanted by the image he projected, mistaking brilliance and confidence for trustworthiness. In that beguiling spell, she had ignored the warning signs that would later make the betrayal sting all the deeper. Her cousin had always carried a spark of ambition that bordered on obsession. From a young age, she had been competitive, charming, and unafraid to bend situations to her advantage. While family gatherings often masked her true nature behind smiles and laughter, subtle hints of envy occasionally surfaced. Quick glances when attention was elsewhere, whispered comments about who deserved more, or a lingering gaze that suggested she wanted more than friendship. These small, almost imperceptible moments now took on a new, sinister meaning in light of the betrayal. As time passed, her cousin's visits became more frequent, each encounter seemingly innocent, yet tinged with an undercurrent of manipulation. She was attentive, overly helpful, and constantly aware of the wife's movements and routines. At first, it seemed like genuine care, a bond between family members, but in retrospect, the actions were calculated. The cousin had been weaving a subtle web, positioning herself close to both the wife and the husband. There had been whispered flirtations disguised as jokes, lingering touches brushed off as playful, and conversations that skirted the edges of intimacy. Each moment, seemingly benign at the time, had been a step toward the eventual betrayal. Her motivations were complex, part desire for wealth, part resentment, and part thrill of power. She saw in her cousin's life the opportunity to claim what she could not earn honestly: status, influence, and access to a world she had always admired from a distance. Ambition had morphed into envy, and envy into action. For the wife, the emotional impact was devastating. The cousin's betrayal was not just romantic, it was deeply personal, a fracture of trust and family bonds. Childhood memories of shared secrets, laughter, and loyalty became tainted. The emotional wound cut deep, intertwining heartbreak with disbelief, and leaving her grappling with a mix of anger, sorrow, and a profound sense of loss. In that moment, she realized that betrayal could emerge from the closest of relationships, and that sometimes, the people who knew you best were capable of hurting you the most. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, each one colliding violently with the next. Fear gripped her first, fear for her unborn child, fear of the uncertainty that now loomed over her life, fear that the world she had painstakingly built could unravel in a single, shattering moment. Every heartbeat felt amplified, a reminder of the life growing within her, of the responsibility she carried, and of the fragility of trust that had just been destroyed. Anger surged next, hot and unrelenting. How could the man she had loved, the man she had trusted to protect and cherish her, commit such a betrayal? And her cousin, someone she had shared childhood memories with, someone she had confided in, had willingly violated that bond. The injustice of it all burned within her, a fire that seemed almost impossible to contain. Her mind replayed the scene over and over, each replay intensifying her rage, her hurt, and the sense of personal violation. Heartbreak wove itself through every thought, an aching sorrow that left her physically and emotionally drained. The dreams she had held for her family, for a safe and nurturing home, now seemed like distant illusions. Every memory with her husband, the promises, the laughter, the plans for the future, felt tainted, as though the foundation of her life had been poisoned from within. Amid the fear, anger, and heartbreak, protective instincts rose with fierce clarity. Her child became her anchor, her reason to fight, to survive, and to reclaim control over a life that had been disrupted so violently. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders, a reminder that she could not allow despair to consume her entirely. Physically, her body reacted to the emotional storm, a tightness in her chest, a fluttering in her stomach, exhaustion seeping into her limbs. Yet even in the midst of such profound pain, a part of her mind remained focused, calculating the next steps, how to protect herself, her child, and her dignity. The betrayal had shaken her world to its core, but it had also ignited a quiet determination, a resolve that no amount of deceit could extinguish. Her uncle was a figure of formidable presence long before his career had made him a household name in legal circles. A district attorney known for his relentless pursuit of justice, he had earned respect, and sometimes fear, through a combination of intellect, precision, and unwavering integrity. His reputation extended far beyond the courtroom. Colleagues admired his sharp mind and ethical rigor, while adversaries knew better than to underestimate his strategic thinking. To the family, however, he was more than a public figure. He was a protector, a man whose loyalty ran deeper than law or duty, and whose instincts had guided them through countless challenges over the years. When he learned of the scandal, his protective instincts ignited immediately. The news of his niece's betrayal at the hands of her husband and cousin stirred something visceral within him, a mixture of outrage, concern, and determination. He understood the magnitude of the situation: a billionaire husband accustomed to wielding power without consequence, a cousin betraying familial trust, and a pregnant niece left vulnerable in the midst of deceit. To him, this was more than a personal affront. It was a matter of justice, integrity, and safeguarding the family he cherished. Beyond his role as a family guardian, the district attorney was a master strategist. He approached every case with meticulous attention, gathering evidence, analyzing motives, and anticipating reactions. That same precision now informed his response to his niece's crisis. He considered not only the emotional fallout but also the legal and social ramifications, aware that confronting a man of such wealth and influence would require both tact and force. The dynamic was tense: a powerful husband used to control, a deceitful cousin, a vulnerable niece, and a district attorney whose very presence could shift the balance. His arrival in her life promised both protection and a calculated, formidable response to the scandal. In the eyes of his niece, he embodied authority, safety, and the unyielding promise that betrayal and injustice would not go unchallenged. His influence, intelligence, and commitment to justice would soon become pivotal in turning the tide of this personal and legal storm. From the moment the scandal came to light, the wife knew that anger alone would not restore her sense of security or justice. She needed evidence, tangible proof that could withstand scrutiny, expose the betrayal, and protect her and her unborn child. Her uncle, the district attorney, immediately assumed the role of both protector and strategist, guiding her with a measured hand while leveraging his legal expertise to navigate a minefield of deceit and influence. They began with the most immediate and undeniable proof: digital communications. Messages, emails, and social media interactions between the husband and her cousin were carefully retrieved and catalogued. Each text and photo told a story of premeditation, deceit, and intimacy that no amount of denials could erase. They meticulously time-stamped conversations, noting locations, frequency, and suspicious patterns that revealed the extent of the affair. Every screenshot, every saved message became a piece of the larger puzzle, building a case that was both precise and damning. Financial records provided another layer of evidence. Unexplained transfers, lavish gifts, and suspicious accounts hinted at collusion, bribery, and attempts to cover tracks. The uncle's experience in corporate oversight allowed him to trace the flow of money with an expert eye, linking transactions to behaviors and interactions that reinforced the narrative of betrayal. Each discovery intensified the stakes, revealing just how calculated and deliberate the affair had been. Witnesses were the final, human element. Friends, staff, and even casual acquaintances provided insights that corroborated digital and financial evidence. Subtle remarks, offhand observations, and inadvertent confessions became invaluable. The wife's recollections, paired with testimony from those around her, painted a complete picture that left little room for doubt. As the evidence mounted, the emotional weight became almost unbearable. Every message, photo, and testimony was a reminder of the betrayal, yet each also fortified their resolve. The web of deceit that had seemed so impenetrable began to unravel, exposing vulnerabilities in both the husband and cousin's carefully constructed facades. Suspense hung in the air with each new discovery, as the billionaire's reputation, carefully maintained through wealth and influence, showed the first cracks. Through meticulous investigation, strategic thinking, and unwavering determination, the wife and her uncle transformed helplessness into power. They were no longer merely victims of a scandal; they were architects of accountability, poised to confront betrayal with evidence that would leave no room for evasion or denial. In this process, they unearthed not just proof of infidelity but also the intricate dynamics of trust, greed, and manipulation that had governed their lives. The confrontation began quietly, almost deceptively calm. The wife had rehearsed her words, pacing her apartment as she prepared to face the man who had shattered her trust. When he arrived, impeccably dressed and wearing the polished confidence that had once charmed her, she didn't flinch. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, held the weight of both betrayal and resolve. "How could you?" she asked, her voice a mix of controlled anger and disbelief. Her words were simple, yet they carried the force of every shattered expectation, every sleepless night, and every silent tear shed while he pursued his secret indulgences. He tried to respond with excuses, the practiced lines of a man accustomed to manipulating situations. His voice was smooth, attempting to charm and distract, but the wife's unwavering gaze and the growing presence of the evidence she and her uncle had gathered stripped him of his defenses. He waved her words aside at first, attempting to minimize the impact, insisting it was a mistake, a fleeting lapse, but every word only deepened the tension, the room thick with the energy of betrayal. When confronted with the cousin, the atmosphere shifted. Her cousin, once a familiar figure from childhood, carried herself with a brazen arrogance. She denied, deflected, and even laughed lightly, as if the severity of her actions were beneath consideration. "You're overreacting," she sneered, a mockery that only fueled the wife's anger. Her calm arrogance, once interpreted as confidence, now revealed the full depth of her betrayal, leaving the wife stunned not only by the act itself but by the callousness behind it. The husband's attempts to cover up escalated as pressure mounted. Threats, subtle intimidation, and attempts to manipulate the narrative became apparent. He implied consequences, whispered of lost fortunes and reputations, and even tried to question her credibility, leveraging the power he believed his wealth could wield. Yet each tactic failed against the meticulous preparation and calm authority of her uncle, who remained a silent presence in the background, his watchful gaze signaling that manipulation would not go unanswered. The confrontations became a volatile mixture of emotional revelation and power struggle. Each denial, each half-hearted apology, each smug gesture of defiance was met with the unflinching truth laid bare by evidence. The wife's strength, bolstered by her uncle's strategic guidance, turned the tables. The tension mounted to a palpable edge, a silent acknowledgement that this was no longer a private betrayal. It was a reckoning, a test of control, and a demonstration that neither wealth, nor deceit, nor arrogance could shield the guilty from accountability. With the confrontations behind them, the focus shifted to strategy. Her uncle, the district attorney, approached the situation not as a personal vendetta, but as a meticulous legal operation. He understood that confronting a billionaire with immense resources required more than anger. It demanded precision, discretion, and calculated leverage. Every step had to be measured, balancing the need to protect his niece and unborn grandchild with the public and legal ramifications of pursuing such a high-profile case. He began by quietly reviewing all gathered evidence, organizing it in a manner that could withstand scrutiny in both civil and criminal contexts. Texts, emails, financial transactions, and witness statements were cross-referenced to create an airtight case. Every inconsistency, every suspicious behavior was noted and mapped to a timeline, leaving little room for dispute. He understood the importance of building a narrative that combined factual evidence with undeniable logic, making it impossible for the husband or cousin to manipulate public perception or legal outcomes. Courtroom strategy became a key focus. The uncle envisioned scenarios: how opposing counsel might attempt to discredit witnesses, how the billionaire's wealth could be leveraged to intimidate or delay proceedings, and how media attention could be both a threat and a tool. He prepared questions that would expose arrogance, lies, and deceit, while ensuring that his niece remained insulated from undue pressure or public scrutiny. Every deposition, subpoena, and legal maneuver was crafted to tighten the net around the guilty parties. Behind the scenes, he also worked to protect his niece's emotional and physical well-being. She was his priority, and while the law provided a framework for justice, the personal stakes, the trauma of betrayal, her pregnancy, and her vulnerability, demanded sensitivity. He instructed her on how to interact with media inquiries, prepared her for the potential fallout, and ensured that her testimony would convey both strength and credibility. The tension between public justice and family loyalty was ever present. The uncle had to navigate a world where personal vengeance could easily be mistaken for bias, where any misstep might compromise both his niece's safety and the integrity of the legal process. Yet, his commitment never wavered. The calculated use of legal pressure, combined with his authority and ethical rigor, began to unravel the husband's web of deceit. Through this careful orchestration, the investigation gained momentum. The billionaire's influence, once thought unassailable, started to falter under scrutiny. The cousin's defenses, once brazen, began to crack under the weight of irrefutable evidence. Every legal maneuver, every subtle courtroom strategy, strengthened their position, signaling that wealth and status could no longer shield wrongdoing from accountability. As the legal proceedings gained momentum, the story inevitably reached the public eye. What had begun as a private betrayal quickly became a media storm, with headlines screaming of scandal, infidelity, and family turmoil. News outlets dissected every detail: the billionaire husband, the pregnant wife, and the cousin whose arrogance had fueled the affair. Social media amplified the outrage, with millions weighing in on what had once been a quiet family matter. Public opinion was swift and unforgiving, painting the billionaire not as a man wronged by circumstance, but as a figure of hubris and moral failure. The billionaire's reputation, once pristine and bolstered by wealth and influence, began to crumble under the relentless scrutiny. Board members questioned his judgment, investors grew wary of associating with a man whose personal life now overshadowed his professional accomplishments, and social elites distanced themselves to avoid being tainted by association. Invitations vanished, business deals stalled, and his carefully cultivated image of control and sophistication unraveled before the eyes of the world. The man who had once believed that money could buy loyalty and silence now found himself isolated, his power diminished by his own actions. The cousin, too, faced the brunt of public judgment. Her privileged position and familial ties offered no shield from the vitriol directed her way. Friends and acquaintances turned away, social circles fractured, and online commentary highlighted her betrayal and audacity. Her arrogance, which had once seemed charming, became a liability as every statement and misstep was scrutinized. Embarrassment and fear replaced her previous confidence, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. Meanwhile, the wife's dignity and resilience captured public admiration. Media outlets focused on her strength, her unwavering composure, and the vulnerability of her pregnancy in the midst of such turmoil. She became a symbol of endurance, a woman navigating betrayal with grace and intelligence. Public sympathy was firmly on her side, providing a stark contrast to the downfall of those who had wronged her. The fallout extended beyond personal humiliation. Legal pressures intensified, as regulators, corporate boards, and law enforcement began examining the husband's business dealings, uncovering financial discrepancies that had long been hidden behind a facade of wealth. The combination of legal exposure and public condemnation created a perfect storm, leaving the billionaire scrambling to mitigate damage while his influence waned. In this maelstrom of scandal, one truth became clear. Power, wealth, and social connections were no match for evidence, public scrutiny, and moral accountability. The betrayal that began in private had exploded into a public reckoning, reshaping relationships, reputations, and the lives of everyone involved. In the midst of the chaos, the wife and her uncle stood as the architects of justice, their strategy and resolve turning the tide against those who had underestimated the consequences of their actions. After months of turmoil, the dust began to settle, leaving the wife in a space where reflection and healing became possible. The betrayal that had once threatened to consume her now served as a crucible, forging a resilience she had not fully recognized within herself. She reclaimed her dignity, no longer defined by the actions of her husband or cousin, but by her courage in confronting deceit, her clarity in pursuing justice, and her unwavering commitment to protect her unborn child. Every decision she made now carried the weight of empowerment, transforming pain into purpose. Her emotional growth was profound. The heartbreak that had once immobilized her became a catalyst for self-discovery. She learned to navigate life with discernment, to trust her instincts, and to place boundaries around relationships that might compromise her well-being. Each moment of reflection, every tear shed, and every instance of courage contributed to a sense of inner strength that she carried forward with quiet confidence. She understood that true power lay not in wealth or influence, but in the ability to maintain integrity, self-respect, and emotional balance in the face of adversity. Her uncle's unwavering support was instrumental throughout this journey. Beyond legal guidance and courtroom strategy, he provided a steadfast presence, a reminder that family loyalty and protection could coexist with justice. His mentorship and encouragement allowed her to confront the challenges head-on, transforming fear and vulnerability into deliberate action. The bond between uncle and niece deepened, founded on trust, shared purpose, and the mutual goal of ensuring accountability. The legal battles culminated with justice firmly delivered. The husband and cousin faced the consequences of their actions, their arrogance and deceit dismantled under the weight of evidence, public scrutiny, and law. The wife's triumph was not merely the result of punitive measures against them, but the reclaiming of her own narrative. She emerged from the ordeal with clarity, strength, and hope, ready to welcome her child into a life built on security, love, and integrity. In the aftermath, healing became both personal and symbolic. The wife's story stood as a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of family support, and the enduring strength of justice. Betrayal had tested her limits, but through courage, strategic action, and the unwavering presence of those who cared for her, she emerged victorious, empowered, and ready to embrace a future defined by her own choices rather than the failings of others.